Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Robert Marx, a retired professor of the University of Miami School of Medicine. This is a YouTube presentation on climate change, the hoax of CO2. This will be a preamble to what you're going to view over approximately 10 different segments. This is based on Climate Change, a Hoax of CO2 Revealed, my latest book on how climate change really occurs and that CO2 has really nothing to do with climate change. The book will tell you that climate change is real. It's advancing slowly at the rate of 1 degree Fahrenheit per century, different from what your politicians are telling you, and that the sea level rise is not due to melting of glaciers. Now, that may be in confrontation with what you're hearing, but stick with this, and I think you will find some interesting data. Now, this is how you can order my book. I would please if you would. And then as we start this, I will show you that there is my uh, email address and my phone number, as well as the publisher. We're open for questions and challenges. So this is all really transparent, things that politicians talk about, but very rarely do. Okay, let's talk about fake science and fear mongering, which is what these climate change obsessed have been using to convince you to do things like buy an EV car, which you don't need, to not eat beef, not eat milk, and feel guilty if you produce anything out of CO2. Here is one of the more egregious fakes. This is Laurie David and Cambria Gordon. Laurie David was the producer of the Inconvenient Truth movie. This, as you can see, is a teenager holding the globe, the Down to Earth Guide to Global Warming. This was a book targeted toward teenagers and children. Laurie David, the producer of Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, was caught switching the tables in his book to hide the fact that global warming preceded CO2 rise. Had he published the actual data, it would have proved the opposite. It would have proved that global warming caused CO2 rise, like I have just tried to explain, but instead it showed that CO2 rise produced global warming. So this whole thing has been based on a purposeful misconception or misunderstanding of the laws of physics. Now, the biggest fake, even worse than that, is the famous hockey stick graph. What the heck is that? This is the hockey stick graph. And as you can see, temperatures related to 1950 go back to thousands of years. And you can see a pretty much of a straight line. But then, due to the Industrial Revolution, roughly about 1920, it increased and jumped up so dramatically. This is what the climate change obsessed wanted. It was considered the smoking gun, yet it turned out to be a fudged science. This article and the graph was exposed and debunked by almost every scientist who looked at the data. And what he did is that he took the average temperature as being equal. Yet I showed you that slide of the temperatures being up and down over the last 5,000 years, including the Little Ice Age and the Roman warming period. He just normalized them to an average temperature. You can't do that. That's completely unscientific and basically lacks scientific integrity. So this is debunked by many of the famous scientists like Harry S. Fisher and a couple others who deal with this all the time. The author was forced to submit a retraction to the scientific journal Nature, which published that article. But it became the center point of the United Nations International Panel on Climate Change, and they produced their AR3, their actual report, -3, in the Paris Conference on Global Warming. If you saw the last debate, even President Biden and Trump referred to the Paris Accords. That Paris Accords was built on this false data. Even today, they don't recognize that that was a complete scientific fraud, even though their scientists tell them that. They want to hang on because not too many people read the Journal of Nature and don't realize that he basically did not compare apples to oranges, if you want to use that phrase. So that's why I say this is the real temperature grid over the last 5,000 years. And you can't see that it was ever at baseline. It was always either above or below it. So more fakery and fear mongering. This is not unusual. I hope people age 30 or more remember some of the following that I'm going to do. Do you all remember the Y2K hoax? If you're not familiar with it, it was the end of the world. As the years turned from 1999 to the year 2000, the millennial change, it was predicted that the computers wouldn't recognize the change of 99 to 00 because they only imparted in the computers the last two digits. So the prediction was by many scientists and politicians that computers would stop. You couldn't pump gas, you couldn't pump water, you would have all kind of difficulties. You couldn't cash checks, banks wouldn't recognize anything. Well, when the New York Ball Times Square dropped from 1999 to 2000, good old computers marched on like nothing happened and it all vanished. Yet the people who were so adamant that it would cause a catastrophe disappeared into the woodwork. They never admitted that, hey, I was wrong. I made a mistake. None of them did. Now, the worst one that really parallels the climate change hoax was the oil shortage hoax of the 1970s. Now, fortunately, I was around in the 1970s, but many of you probably weren't. If you were around, you will recall much of this. If you weren't, please look it up on the internet. You'll have a big laugh and it will strike home to you. What happened in the 1970s is that every politician, every Democrat in particular, and every politician except Ronald Reagan said that the Earth's oil will run out by 2005. 2005. That's almost 20 years ago. And that when that happens, we're going to be stuck for energy. So debates preceding then President Carter, George Wallace, a group of other Democrats, Mo Udall, all of these people running for the presidential nomination, all ardently quoted other scientists that the world would run out of oil by 2005, at the latest 2015, and we had to ration it. So there was gas rationing. There were oil shortages, gas shortages. We were required to travel no more than 55 miles per hour, and that was pretty strongly enforced. There was double-digit inflation and unemployment because, again, energy is a big economic impact, energy dependence of the United States. It created what's called the misery index, the inflation plus unemployment. And there was limitations on air conditioning and heating. It turned out to be a hoax. Now, time has revealed it to be a hoax. There's plenty of oil. In fact, right now, people are saying there's too much oil. The Dakotas are full of oil. Alberta, Canada is. The Saudi Arabia hasn't depleted their oils yet. Iran has. Iraq, all of these people, and Venezuela have plenty of oil. Mexico as well. Now, this was the same. This is a car lines back in the 70s, so you can see some 1970s cars, and they're all waiting to get a rationed amount of gas. I did that. And then there were a lot of these. Sorry, no gas. So climate change based on CO2 and the Green New Deal is the same types of hoax that exist in the 1970s. Let us not forget that. Older people like myself should not forget it. And you younger folks need to look this up and see that it was no laughing matter. For 4, 5, 6 years, we had to do this rationing. And there were, of course, fights about who's in turn to get gasoline and the like.